Hey guys, welcome back to the Lights Off podcast. Pretty excited today. We've got current PNG Sevens player and Super Dub player Melanie Kawa. Sis, how are you going?
Hi, great to see you.
Good to see you, and thanks so much for jumping on. Really appreciate your time. For some of those people who might not know who you are, please introduce yourself, bit of background on who you are, what you do.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm Mel Kawa. I'm currently here in Melbourne. We just finished our season for the Super Rugby season with the Melbourne Rebels. I'm one of the captains down here. But I'm also, as you mentioned, a player as part of the Papua New Guinean Sevens side, the PNG Palais. I was born and raised in Papua New Guinea, but I didn't start playing rugby until I moved to Australia and went to university. So I'm playing rugby for a long time now, 15 years odd. Started off in Brisbane at University of Queensland. And after a few fun years of playing there, made a lot of friends. One of my coaches was like, hey, listen, if you really, really love rugby, you know you can like play it around the world, right? So I sort of started taking it a little bit more seriously, started, applying it and learning as much as I could about rugby. And I used it to play overseas a couple of years. I was in New York City playing for Brooklyn Women's Rugby for a year there. That was really interesting. And then after I started becoming a real big fan of women's rugby, like not only playing it, but I loved seeing all the athletes. And then it was the 2014 World Cup that I watched that whole World Cup and I thought, wow, there are some major athletes around the world. Particularly, I really like the Northern Hemisphere rugby. So yeah, I followed my dream to go and play overseas as well. So I ended up spending a year in France. But, it's just been about 15 years of just being really in love with the game and traveling around. And, somehow I've just landed back here in Melbourne.
Yeah, epic. And obviously you played for the sevens, but did you start with 15s and then move into sevens, or just straight into sevens?
So if you want to be a big purist, sevens was not that popular. Matter of fact, I didn't even know about it back in 2006 when I started. But then, after the first cup, I think in 2009 in Dubai, when Australia won the very first Sevens World Cup, I thought, this will be a game, for the fast people, and I will never learn to play it. But then just it just started getting more exposure. And then obviously after it got added to a sport in the Olympics, I mean, it's just gone gangbusters. So I actually only started playing, I guess, really trying to be a sevens player from about 2015, 16. Yeah. So in the last 4 or 5 years, I've really come to find a huge appreciation for rugby sevens as its own type of spectator sport. Real fast, exciting, and extremely tough to play. You have to be some kind of athlete to play rugby sevens at the international stage.
Yeah, definitely. I think you're so right. Like there wasn't much exposure around sevens, so it was always 15s, and then it was just shot off, and it was just like everyone wanted to be amongst it. Everyone wanted to watch it. Everyone wanted to kind of get involved with it, and things like that. And so like for you, like who I mean, I know you mentioned your coach before, but who was like an inspiration for you to actually like fully kickstart it? Is there like some athletes that you saw and you're like, oh yeah, I want to give this a crack?
Yeah, well, you know what? When I was playing club rugby back in the mid 2000s, there was one woman on the team. Her name was Trish Brown, and the rest of us were just sort of there to have a laugh, make some friends, get together every Saturday. But she was a state athlete. She was a Wallaroo on the wing, and she was also in the Aussie Seven side. So I remember I used to see her, coming down, an hour before training even started, and like her doing sprints and stuff like that. And I thought, wow, that's the level that you have to kind of be in. So she was very fast, very fit. And then the Queensland Reds at that time for 15s and 7s were always quite good. And I think that's because Queensland and Sydney, New South Wales, basically, always had the kind of dominance for women's rugby. I didn't really, whenever we went to nationals, I didn't see it anywhere else. But, it was in playing for the Reds. I played with a fair few other Wallaroos like Cheyenne Campbell and there was Kelly Donnelly, this was back in the day. And then when I went to play New South Wales, it was the players like Ash Houston, like Tui Ormsby, these not like back, incredible players that I thought, this might be something that I want to do. And then obviously after that 2014 World Cup, where I think England beat Canada in the final or something, and France finished top 3. I started to look overseas, so looking at players like Safi Ndiaye, Elodie Poublon, even Katie McLean from England, and then obviously, you can't go past the impact that Black Ferns and that they have on women's rugby in general. Even someone like Kendra Coxedge, she's just all of like 5 foot something, has such dominance over any game that she plays because she's obviously been grown over there, know it so well, and then these days later on, you only have to look to someone like Sarah Goss in the Sevens team. And one of my favorite players was oh no, I can't, I've just gone blank. I hate when I do that.
You're right.
Kayla McAllister coming over from netball. She's a netballer, transferred into rugby sevens. Blew my mind. It was like these women are pure athletes, and I just wanted to learn as much as I could.
Yeah, no, that's epic, and that's so cool. Like how you mentioned, I think Trish Brown, like just seeing her at club level, but her training, like she never dropped it just because she was at a club level.
Right.
She just kept it, at that high intensity level, and it's not just for you, but like for anyone around. It would inspire them a lot, and she probably didn't even realize it. She's probably like, this is just the norms for her, like.
Exactly. But the best thing about her, and it is difficult when you play it, say, I've had a little bit of experience now that when you go and you're in these like intense camps, like I was in a Wallaroos camp for a bit, and then you come back to club level and people just play for different motivations. And it's about navigating that to find, that everybody's still enjoying rugby. So not everybody, to be honest, wants to even win. Some of them just want to play for fun, and that's fine as well. But, the further up you go, just becomes increasingly competitive. And when you bring that competitive mindset back to club, that's when you start developing, really good players. So from those teams now, I used to play with Meg Ward and Amelia Cook, Lala, and they now, use that environment to go and prosper in other sports like league. So it really helps when you've got those kind of connections to club rugby.
Yeah, 100%. And like the roots, grassroots is where it's at. And that's where a lot of incredible athletes are birthed.
Absolutely.
In grassroots. And like for yourself, like how did you kind of manage, like you said, you can come to a club team and you've got yourself who would be really competitive, and then you've got someone who's just like, I'll come training when I want, like I'm just here for the social buzz, like how did you kind of I guess help train your mindset, I guess, to adapt to that, because it must be hard, you want to be competitive, but then you also don't want to kind of like dim someone's light because they're just there to have fun.
You know what? It was really, it's quite difficult and it can be frustrating. But when I first joined in 2006, my club team, UQ, we won the comp. So here I was like first year thinking, oh, this is easy. Like we just win every year. Like we didn't even miss a game. But then the next year, and for the next 8 years, I had to wait. I really had to wait. I had to, there's some clubs go through like a regeneration. So, players retire, they get jobs, they have families. And so every single year for 8 years, it was like, we come rock up the new season and see who we've got. And fortunately, what I believe is like the team that wins grand finals and club championships, which are so special, every single person in that team kind of has to want it the same.
Yeah.
So yeah, it did take a long time, and I had to wait for players to, you know, develop that sort of hunger. But it does. You create cultures. You create like these standards of professionalism. Especially if you have a good coach, and a good
Mm.
coach will come in and look. He or she will identify players and go, I know what I have to do to try and get the best out of that player. That player, that, like me, for example, I am not, nor have I ever been the best player on any team, but I've had coaches come here and, like I said, they take me and they mold me and they say, you have good strengths in this. You would be better if you did this. So, and then they mold you, and then they kind of like orchestrate a grand final winning team. So fortunately for us, you know, from 2006, I waited till 2014, and every single player in that team, we weren't the best team, but we really wanted it, and the coach was great, and we ended up winning. So
Epic.
I think culture and a good coach and who can develop players, that probably is the secret ingredient, I guess.
Yeah, no, 100%. And that's so cool how you brought up those three things, because like for me as well, when playing at club, I think those three are actually, like you said, the keys in any club one. But like you talked about culture first off, and like how how not just how important it is, but like how do you develop a great team culture with a bunch of people you've never met before? Like how do you get them to buy into what you guys want to do as a team, but also like what the coach is
Yeah,
aiming to achieve as well? Like
that's a
how do
really
you
good
do it?
question. And yeah, I love that question. And I'll use the example of the Melbourne Rebels, just our season just gone, the Super W 2020. So when I first got there, Melbourne is unique. It's different in the sense that if you come to Melbourne, you'll drive around, you'll see AFL fields everywhere, you'll see cricket ovals everywhere, and it's really like, you know, every time I see a rugby post, you're like, oh look, rugby, like it's a little bit foreign. So what our coach this year, Alana Thomas, she's a really great coach here in Australia and head coach of the Melbourne Rebels. She sat us all down and she said that we are going to first and foremost create a team culture that's unmatched, you know, and from that
Okay.
we will eventually get what we deserve. So we as a playing group and the coaching group, we went on a camp and we identified that, you know, you can throw facts and figures and everything from the last season to this season and throw all your game plans and whatever. But if each, as I said before, if each individual doesn't know what the main goal is and what we're playing for, then you're lost already. So we sat down and we sort of gave ourselves like a kind of like a charter or something that we all bought into, and there were like 5 key points. It was like urgency, professionalism. We wanted to at all times be someone that we could be proud of, and
Yeah.
if like a young girl or a young boy on the sideline was watching, even in or out off the rugby field, they could be like, oh, I want to be a rebel like her. So then we started this sort of like a brand, I guess, Rebel Like Her, started an
So
Instagram page, started telling our stories. And it was in that sort of sharing and storytelling that each of us got to know each other a bit better. And then from there, you naturally understand someone. So then you
yeah.
understand how someone plays. You understand why someone's really tired because they have 4 kids at home. You understand that someone's a little bit stressed now because she's got exams. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
we built an understanding of each other. We built a team culture, and then we built like a charter. It's the wrong word, but you know, that we were like, we're always going to try and keep it above the line. No one's going to it's okay to have bad days, but you don't put anyone down. You don't you know, you don't you keep the goal in mind at all times.
Yeah.
So from that, I mean, the results came. We got what we deserved in the sense that the Melbourne Rebels in the last 2 seasons prior had never won a game. We ended up coming within 1 point of our first win in round 3, and then in the last round we definitely we beat WA, and that was our very first win ever after 3 years of Melbourne Rebels Super Rugby.
Yeah.
And then from that, we ended up getting other accolades, like one of our teammates got player of the tournament. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then a couple of other girls got look-ins for the Wallaroo side. So it just speaks volumes about how important it is to create that mentality and culture. But first, you have to understand who we are as individuals and what we can bring as a playing group. So it was a real credit to the coaches and the girls themselves that they all bought in, and we had a really successful season.
Yeah. No, I think that's really good, and I love that. And I think what you mentioned about like getting to know like your teammates, like if you don't know them and then you come to a game and it's like a tough game and you're like, come on guys, like we got this. It's if you don't connect with them off the field, like it's very hard to connect with them on the field. So I've always been like massive like getting to know the player, getting tight with your sisters on your left and your right off the field, and how much more of a difference it makes on the field. Because once you get to know them, like you get to understand like why they're so tired when they come to training. Like I know in one of my teams, I had Asi Palmafi. She was with us at the Panthers. She works two jobs and she like did the whole day shift, and then straight after training she just
I know,
a night shift.
Yeah.
And it's just like, what? How do you do what
That's
you
right.
do? But like just getting to know the why behind, like how players train, why they're like this. It's I think it's huge. It's massive. And then like you said with like how you guys from the outside, people will be like, oh, they only won one game, like out of 3 seasons. But yet behind that all, like you are first a player. You're first a person before you're an athlete, and I think that's so cool, like how you guys build that culture. And from the outside, they might just see the results of the game, but they don't realize how much of an impact each player would have walked away with lifelong friends. They would have learned values and things that they can do outside in like, everyday life. You know what I mean? So I think it's great, and like you touched on the coach as well. Like for you, like I think coaches have a huge role in an athlete's performance, in their training, and their preparation. So for you, like what kind of like characteristics, I guess you would call it, that you look for in a coach when going to a club team or in a rep team? What stands out for you?
Yeah, so I've been really fortunate enough to have a lot of different coaches over the years. But I think one of the most, successful characteristics or traits of a coach is like their sort of dedication to the team. And it doesn't have to be an overtly like, in your face, texting all the time, like speaking to you all the time. But it's that sort of like subtle, it can be subtle, but like the preparation and the organization that they have for the team. And it's that understanding of the players. Okay. So, and that it takes, as you mentioned first, it's not just about the game. You're actually coaching. I like to think my preferred coaching style is that they look after the person as well. Because if you look after the person, then you can be sure that that person is giving everything as an athlete to the team. Yeah, so, like I said, establishing a good culture first and foremost from within the team, and being adaptable and allowing things to change. So if a coach came in, and I've seen it happen before, and they have a vision of what the season's supposed to go like, and what this is supposed to go like, and what the game plan is supposed to be. If a coach isn't adaptable and able to, see something, see whether it's working or not, analyze it, evaluate, then come back with a whole new thing. I've seen coaches start off with something and completely flip, and we were playing, the other, like a completely opposite way to when we were first taught, but it was what was required. So, again, just like a coach that is able to do that, and it's very difficult. I have such a new level of respect for coaches now that I myself am sort of starting to understand what would be my leadership style or coaching style. It's very, very tricky. And I think one other really important thing for coaches is that they are authentic. So the last thing you want to see is a coach coming in and preaching about like, guys, you got to, be respectful, and then they themselves not very respectful, or doing the things that we all agreed we weren't going to do. Someone who's authentic, reliable, has a kind of like a love for the game, wants to see the best out of their players. I mean,
I think it's great how you mentioned an authentic coach, because people relate to authenticity. And just like also when you mentioned about like you guys coming together and you all like contributing to like your values.
That's right. Usually has a backs coach, a forwards coach, a defense coach. They usually have people working underneath them, because one coach honestly, the higher up you go, it's too hard. You can't just puppeteer like everyone, because you want to have trust in people that they're gonna get their own job done as well. So but you're right, the feedback comes, it has to be a two-way street. If it's just sort of one way, authoritarian type thing, that stuff, people are off that, because you want to make sure that it's a communicated relationship where you're trusting the coach to have the best game plan and get the best out of the players, but at the same time the coach is trusting you that what he or she says and tells you, you will actually do, or you will actually buy in. So
and like it's also great for the players. Like, for example, if a coach comes in and is like, okay, these are our values, like blah blah blah, right? And then it gets to and then it gets to a place when players like, well, I didn't say that I want to do that, like and I don't agree with that kind of thing. But when you get, that's why I love those camps and things like that, when they come together and you get a player to have an input, because like, for example, one of our values was like around commitment, but we as a playing group came up with that. So when someone was slacking off at training and that, it was just like some of our leadership group would be like, hey sis, remember when we went to camp, like we all agreed that if we want to get here, if we want to win the championship, this is what we've got to do, and we all bought into it, and I think it's really important that players do have that say. Because otherwise it's just like you said, it's just a one-way street. They won't relate. You'll have people falling off. They won't come to training. They'll forget the why and everything like that. So it's really important.
Yeah, that's right.
And obviously after club, then you obviously headed into a bit more of a rep footy. So how did that come about? Obviously with the Rebels, but then also with Papua New Guinea as well.
So I'm here in France in 2015 and 6. That season, for me, I was like, well, I've done it. I ticked off my goal. I wanted to play in Europe. I did that. When I came back, I came to like a fork in the road. So I'm half Australian, half Papua New Guinean. But obviously the rules around rugby being that if you choose to play for another country other than Australia, it's a 3-year wait minimum. And, I was getting on, I was like already 30. So I was like, you know what, there's a point in my life where, as much as I'd hope, because at that time, the level of playing and the coaching and the resources and everything like that is so much better in Australia. But when I went back home, I saw that good athletes back there, there was such talent just sitting there waiting for, someone to actually pay attention to them and go, hey, I think you and you can do well. So I remember making the decision in 2016. I said, that's it. I said, I'm going to go back. And I ended up being the captain of the first ever women's 15 side for Papua New Guinea. And we played in the Oceania test in Fiji. And just that experience alone, it was really humbling. And it also, I went from like this like professional tournament in Europe to, we didn't have balls, uniforms, we didn't even have, and we had like one coach that was just so dedicated to the girls. And I thought, we've got to humble ourselves and start here, and we can create something. Now from that, it just sort of like, we found a few players that, such as like Debbie Kaore, she had come over from boxing and started to play rugby. Gemma Schnobelt, we had Fatima Rama, like we took this group of girls and gone, we're amazing athletes. Why we should just dedicate ourselves to that. So
Yeah.
fortunately for us, the PNG Rugby Football Union came on board, and they got us when I say proper coach, I mean no disrespect. I mean like a qualified, experienced coach, not just like someone who was a volunteer that loved the game, but we actually, they shopped around and they got a very good coach in Paul Chechens. He's Sir Gordon Chechen's son, the famous New Zealand and Samoan sevens coach.
Yeah.
He came on board in about 2017 or 18. And from there, the PNG Palais every year would go win qualify at the Fiji Oceania tournament to go and play in Hong Kong, and also go and play in the first round of the World Series, the HSBC World Series. So after maybe 2017, 18, 19, we now have this like functioning group of core girls whose fitness levels have like gone through the roof. We now have players making like, you know, tries of the tournament, and, you know, we're narrowing the gap where we used to get beaten by about 50, 60 points, no joke. It's now down to about 20, it's 2 tries. You know, it's like the bounce of a ball. It's here, there, and everywhere. So we've met from, thankfully, Oceania Rugby and World Rugby, the women's 17 as athletes. So I'm really fortunate enough to still be in that squad, although it's getting harder to stay in that squad. The girls are coming up from everywhere now. So that's my hope, that I keep playing rugby as long as my body will let me, to try and get it to a stage where, you know, you have world-class players coming from Papua New Guinea.
Yeah,
so
exactly. And
that's what we're doing.
that's so like true. In terms of the women, like, you know, if you play for one country and then that stand down period. And I remember when I was at that, like it was between SAR and NZ, and I didn't realize that there was a stand down period. And I remember being like, you kind of have to make a call, like, you know. And it's one thing to play for your culture, and then the other one you love just as much because it's where you were brought up, like you've done your life there. So it's really hard for people to make those decisions, but to go back and for yourself to give back to your culture and to your people, I know that they would be like, oh my gosh, can't believe, you know, we have this, you know, this athlete, like you've got Gemma as well coming in, and that would have been so great for them, and it would have sparked like an excitement for the people back home. For you, so like when you went back there, like I know you mentioned like there was a stage where you had like no balls and no uniforms, and I know our Samoan team would be the same. Like it's kind of like starting from scratch. So what was that like when you went back home? Like you mentioned it was a bit humbling and stuff. Like it must have been pretty cool to go back home, see your people. Did you guys play a game at home at all?
Yeah. So it's very like being mixed race. I code switch all the time, you know, and having played only ever played my rugby in Australia, in my mindset, rugby, you know, it was like, this is the best way to do it. This is like the only way to do it. And it took me a long time to unravel that. When I went back to Papua New Guinea, the thing that I learned was that you can't take someone else's model and style of rugby and just throw it on any rugby team and expect it to be that way. How Fiji are, and gold medalists or whatever, and New Zealand's not far away, but they, like, you can see that they've built their own style. Do you know what I mean? It's a very like offloady game. It's so bouncy, and like if any other team was to try and replicate that, I think that they wouldn't do so well. So even though it was humbling to go back, it was also frustrating in that when I was there, I was trying to like teach that the way I'd been taught in Australia or Europe, and it wasn't really working. So what has happened since then is, thanks to, you know, good coaches, they've been able to take the PNG women's team, the players, and, you know, teach them the fundamental basics. But then in the end, you're going to have to make your own style of rugby up. So it's really hard to do that when you have resources. You know, I remember in Fiji, the day before the game, no one had organised our jerseys, so we were all there in town in Suva, like looking for shorts and like,
no way.
You know, some players don't even have boots and stuff like that. Yeah, it was really stressful. So that whole stand down period, I really while I understand it, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to build a loyalty toward this and that, but it's so difficult for players like myself who are from like mixed heritage, or, you know, maybe they come from Samoa, Tonga background, for them to go, will I choose the Wallabies who have like, or if a chance at making, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars and being set for life and like traveling the world and stuff like that, or do I choose you know, struggle street and go, you know, it's like, it's a really, really tough decision to make.
Yeah.
And I think that stand down period makes it even tougher to go and play for, you know, your country of origin or your heritage, or play for your family.
Yeah,
But I
definitely.
really hope that World Rugby, and especially after this post COVID time, that they start seriously considering allowing players to develop the rugby in their own countries, like Papua New Guinea and Fiji and Samoa and Tonga, and then making it such a viable comp, a viable option for me personally in my rugby, back home and play.
Yeah.
There should be more matches, there should be more avenues for pathway player development, so that it's not, let's get good at rugby and then just jump ship and go play for New Zealand or Australia. It shouldn't be like that. If you were to take, like, look at any rugby team, I'm talking even in France, they've got Pacific Islander players. Japan rugby is another great example of when players go over and they naturalize, you know, they've chased their families, they go over, they end up playing for Japan instead of where, you know, where their parents come from or whatever. But I just want to, a dream of mine would be for the Pacific Islander communities to like create these all-stars and then start playing competitive high-level international rugby. They've kind of made it like a tokenistic gesture in World Rugby for them. You know, score lines of 55, no one wants to see that. It's not good for them, and it's not good for the future of this country. Perhaps in the future we'll see a lot of players choose to play for their Pacific Islander countries.
Yeah, 100%. So, like you're saying, about the whole standout thing, I think it's so true. Because it's sad in a way that almost like the athletes do have to make that call. Like, am I gonna play at this high performance level, or am I gonna do something a bit selfless and help like my people and try and, like, you know, create something from scratch. But I'm the same as you. I'd love to see World Rugby consider that stand down period. I know, like, for the guys in there, like, you know, they are trying to, you know, create that loyalty so people don't just jump ships, you know, when they want. But for the women, like, I think it would be great for them to really consider that, because you're right. You don't like seeing, you know, a Pacific Island team get smashed 50, 60 points. And it's like when you play club rugby, like, you know, you go up against a team and then like they're full of stars, and then you got this like a little club team that's trying to start out and it just gets hammered like 80 mil, 70 mil, you know. But I don't know what it's like from World Rugby's point of view, but I know, like, for a lot of people who are like half caste, they've got two different cultures. I know that that would be huge if they could consider, you know, that stand down period.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, imagine if, like, because it would have a flow-on effect. So, for example, if there were 3 or 4, say, I'm going to use an example like Samoan-born Australians, right? They were all hot contenders for the Wallaroos jumper, whatever. And then they all sort of went, oh, you know what? I think we're all going to choose to, you know, play for Samoa.
Yeah.
It would just create that much high-level competition, and new players from Australia would have to come up and, you know, battle for that. Like, I think it would just, yeah, if you can even out the combat, as you were saying, because no one likes to see monopoly on test match rugby. It's really terrible, and I would love to see more Oceania teams, apart from the top big 3 like Australia, New Zealand, Fiji. I'd love to see more Oceania teams playing test rugby against Europe or whatever. Like, it's so segregated to the point where I don't think teams like Papua New Guinea will never be able to play teams like Sweden or Mexico, who perhaps are on our level, and like we might have a good contest there. There's just no avenue for it, and I
Yeah.
don't understand why. In sevens, obviously, much easier to do. You only have to take 10 players and not 23.
Yeah.
It's cheaper, but just through rugby 7 particularly, it's been such a eye opener for how rugby is played around the world. In 2018, I was real fortunate enough to go and play in the World Cup, and the Sevens World Cup in San Francisco, and it was one of the most proudest moments of my life, like carrying this flag from this island country in the Pacific, like around America, full of players who didn't even know where we came from. It was a really like great experience. And on top of that, the Pacific Games, when all these Pacific islands come together, I tell you, it's like the most fun competition because culture is so inextricably linked. There's just dances and music going on everywhere, and like, just like laughing, and all the sounds of living in the Pacific come to the forefront at those kind of tournaments, and they're some of my favorites. So
Yeah,
I love it.
100%. And I think it's when you mention like the avenue of like for example Papua New Guinea not given that opportunity to play against teams like Sweden and like Ireland and things like that. Like it's like sometimes if they don't get the opportunity, they'll almost stay at that same level and never
Precisely.
be able to give them that opportunity to grow because they only play the same ones all the time. And I think it's great
exactly right.
both ways. Like the high performance one get to see, the ones that are just starting out, how like challenges that they're facing as a team, as a country, and then the other way around, they get to see them at a high performance level. I'm like, I want that. I want to strive more for that. Like everything, it would work both ways. And so I think it would be epic to see that take place.
You're right. World Rugby for the sevens, they're on the right path. They're now thinking of starting so you've got your tier 1 nations, your Australia, New Zealand, England, France, up there. And then there's every year in Hong Kong that we used to play what was called like the Challenger Cup. So they're all the next 10 nations. So whoever won that would always go in the series, right? Now what I think they're doing, and I think it's a great idea, they're going to start like a mini World Series for all those tier 2 nations, so they can build up those test matches. You can build up your skills playing against countries that are of the same caliber, so you don't get like depressed after we lose like 30 points. So I think World Rugby was going in that direction just before COVID, so I really hope that they do take that on board for sevens, because I think it'd be super valuable in building the game. And also I really hope that one day down the track, when women are considered professional rugby athletes, that we get the same type of thing where the Pacific nations maybe play against the tier 2 nations in South America or Asia or Europe. I think if they're on the same level of rugby, we'll be able to test our skills rather than putting small countries like Papua New Guinea up against New Zealand or Australia. It might just be too big a gap at this stage.
Yeah, definitely. I think it would be so cool as well because of for the people like of like Papua New Guinea, like for example, like seeing, say for yourself, like to go over there to San Francisco and like your family, and that must have been like, oh, that's my niece, that's my daughter, like just having that pride, and so to give like small nations like that opportunity to be on a big stage like that, or even just like a little tournament would mean so much to like a small nation like that. So I'm excited. I hope World Rugby would consider just I think it's going to be great for the game in the long run, and that's what you want. You want more people to participate. So, changing things up might not be like the normal, but well, what's normal these days, to be honest.
No, you're right.
So yeah, I'm excited. I really do hope for our Pacific people that changes, and that'll be epic to see for the game as well. You touched on like obviously a lot of success and being able to have all these opportunities to travel, which is epic, especially in sevens. Or the places that you can go is pretty crazy. But like any athlete, there's always challenges that come. Like, so for yourself, like, what kind of challenges have you faced or setbacks that you've faced along your career from club right through to international, and not just the challenges, but like how did you cope? Like what kind of resources or tools did you use to overcome it? Because every athlete would go through it, I'm sure.
Yep. Look, there's been so many challenges. First and foremost, I guess if I was starting rugby today as a female, women's rugby player, I think it is a lot clearer now, my pathways and avenues and things I can do from when I started. So 15 years ago, if you wanted to play rugby, you pretty much were just playing for fun. You go and play club rugby, and then once a year, on one weekend for 2 days, you would you'd get together in your rep team and go and play. And if you happen to perform on that one weekend, okay, you might get a chance to go and play for, a higher honours jersey. And then from that higher honours jersey, like once every 4 years, or maybe 2 years, if there were any test matches, you'd play that. So you see, the avenue was super small. So when I started, I was like, oh, why would I bother? Because it's like the chances of getting there are so limited.
Yeah.
You cut to now, these days, it's starting to grow. I mean, they've built this like platform where I now can tell you which girls are playing in the sevens tournament this weekend, and household name, they're getting picked for rep teams. Some of them are playing in Japan, some of them are doing this and that. Like now the different avenues for how you can play rugby. If I started today, I have the opportunity to play rugby around the world. I can almost get a scholarship to go to university to play rugby. Like it's just changed so much, but it's still like nowhere compared to the opportunities for a male player. So one of the biggest challenges was that I could not see where I could go, and I had to create it myself.
Yeah.
Okay. So when I was shopping around for overseas clubs, I made my own video and I was sending it to agents who were like, "What? We don't do women's rugby players." Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that was the major challenge. And then you throw onto that there at that stage there was no professional league. There's still, to this day, I wouldn't call what we're playing in now, Super Rugby, a professional league because it's unpaid.
Yeah.
It's unpaid, meaning all the time spent, all the 15, 20 hours a week when you're in season for 5 months, unpaid. So that's like fuel money, your food that you have to spend because you're eating so much more when you're training. Do you know what I mean? Luckily we have gym programs and things that are given to us, so we don't have to go out and make that stuff up ourselves. And the coaching is obviously all given to us, and we don't have to pay for our own jerseys, things like that. When I first started, we had to pay $1,000. I don't know how I made that money. I was working in a deli. I didn't know where I was going to get $1,000. I had to pay rent to represent your state. It was so backward. And so we've gotten away with all that stuff by getting sponsors on board. But if people don't know what they're going to get from women's rugby, they're hard-earned. They don't want to let go of their cash. So by the fact that we have broadcast rugby now, when Super Rugby's on, you can watch it like a men's game. And I walked past the pub the other day and it was on in the pub. And it was fantastic. Like if you build it, people are going to watch it. This is a really exciting brand of rugby. The skills are really good. Here's some more money so that you can get better players. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the challenge about sponsoring women's rugby was also a really big one. The other challenge I had was, so that challenge is still a current challenge.
Yeah.
So hopefully that's one that we're working really hard on. I know I'm a big advocate for sponsoring female elite athletes. I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me that they're not doing it, because they're doing it all over in other countries. So I don't know. Anyway, another challenge was obviously your body, your physical health, the injuries that I have. Oh my gosh, I've got a list like this long. I've had like, major surgeries to even minor injuries. Like when you do, last season I did a calf muscle injury. Now they say that's an old woman injury, but I've never had one of those before. And it's so devastating. It really hurts your heart when you've primed everything else and then unluckily you roll an ankle or, you break your finger or these little things, you got to like manage them. But I think as I've gotten older, the more I respect my body and I listen to her, and when she tells me, hey, Mel, your hamstrings are tight, you should not probably go and do these sprints because you'll pull one. So when I started listening to my body, and that came from a bit of education from, professional, like top down, they were telling me how to roll out, how to recover, how to rehab, how to prehab. So I got that later on in my career, and I probably would have saved myself a few years on the sidelines if I had learned that a bit earlier.
Yeah.
But yeah, among the challenges, just maintaining a good, strong, healthy balance of mental health, like with your social networks. Rugby is a lot of time away from whatever, like people think it's all glorious that we fly around the world and stuff like that. And we could train for up to like 6 months for one tournament. And that 6 months is so much. It's a dedication of your life to waking up early and then going somewhere and catching transport to go train here. And, I gave away my Saturdays every Saturday for like 10 years. Do you know what I mean? And then one thing I'm looking forward to when I finally hang it up is finding what else do I like to do. And I've started to sort of do that with like surfing and, things that I want to do. So anyway, I don't want to go on too much about challenges. Otherwise girls won't want to play the game, but it's honestly given me the most, but I've also given a lot of my life to the sport. And it's been tough sometimes.
And like when you came, like, I don't know if you can remember back to like say your first injury, and that like for someone who is coming into the game and like might pick up like a minor injury, like you said, like might roll their ankle or do something with their calf and they're out for maybe a couple of weeks or 3 weeks. For someone who's never experienced that before, it's like end of the world. Oh my gosh, like I don't know what to do. Like so for you, like how did you like cope with that? Well, like for me sometimes when I go through injuries or struggles like that, like I'll write or like go to the beach and just chill. Like do you, what's your kind of like I guess method of going through that and coping?
Well, that's a really good question. So injury list, as I mentioned before, I say it now like I'm proud of it, but I'm not. I've had 2 knee reconstructions, so one on each knee. That's a full, 9 months out recovering on that. I've had like dislocated elbows. I've had like AC joints, broken noses and stuff like that. But honestly, when I was first starting rugby, I came from netball, so that's non-contact. But I tell you, netball had just as many injuries. Like I did my knee playing netball, not rugby, the first one. So the best thing about rugby, it is such a contact sport, but I have been able to play 15 years. I don't know how many thousands of hours that is of rugby. And if you compare it, it's really only a real small handful of times that I've actually got away injured. The amount of times I put my whole body force into another person, contact and everything, I've never once had a concussion. And I put that down to someone taught me really well at the very start of rugby how to perform contact properly. And now I'm not scared of anything, that's thrown at me. The injuries that I got have really, I would say, were like something to do maybe genetically, like my knees. Probably I wasn't coached to run properly. That no one teaches you how to run when you're a kid. They're like, just go run. And I probably wasn't running as well as I thought. So anyway, what I'm trying to say is those 2 years with my knee recons that I had on the sideline, I learned so much more about my body and the function of my body and how to build the muscles to compensate for the movements in rugby. And I learned so much more in those 2 years on the sideline than I ever did just playing when no one's actually coaching you, how to build your upper body strength or core strength, and correct strength in your back and lifting movements and stuff like that. So being injured had a massive silver lining for me in terms of learning how to get the most out of body. And these days, with the kind of coaching that we have for women's rugby and the way it's going, is there is so much important placed on a woman's physique because it's so different from men's physique. You can't expect a woman's body to replicate exactly what's going on in the men's game. And so you need eyes and a focus on how to develop women's strength. In that time off in injury, I spent a lot of time in rehab doing rehab running. And people think that's like rubbish, but like, I mean, not rubbish, but like it builds with you a mental resilience that you can beat this. And it kind of gets like you want to talk about mindset. It gives you a growth mindset after you've had a few injuries going. Like, I remember when I first did my left knee, I didn't know what to do, and I was real panicky, and I let my muscle waste away, and I didn't do anything. The absolute instant I did my second knee, I remember going, oh, I know what this will take. I know this will take 9 months of solid work. I know I'm going to and so the next few days I went straight back to the gym and I got it strong. And I was back in like 6 to 9 months. I was back faster second time than the first time. Yeah. So it builds in you learn from it, and you just start realizing that injuries are part of rugby. And if you use your time wisely, it can be just as valuable as you playing a whole season and not learning anything about your body.
Yeah, 100%. That's so cool. And I know, like, for anyone watching that, I don't think it would scare someone off playing the game. I think it would just prepare them, like, if they did come across that scenario, okay, this is what I can do. And it's not just a negative that I'm out of the game. What can I get out of this time during off the field, But like, also another massive thing for any athlete is recovery. So for you, like, after a game, after a test match, and that, what does recovery look like for you? Like maybe the day after. I know it's always almost the second day after a game that you feel it the most. I don't know if that's for you, but most of the time it would never be the next day. It's always like the Monday, and it's like back to work.
The Monday.
And
Yeah.
So what do you do for your recovery?
Well, these days I take it quite seriously because, I'm getting on. So, especially with sevens is such a dynamic sport where you're really only running around for sometimes not even 14 minutes, sometimes usually less than like 10 minutes, but you're using so much like force in your calves and legs and stuff like that. So, during competition and even after training, like ice baths and, these things just help to try and like flush all that, build up of lactic acid and things that you have in your body. Nutrition is a huge one. So I used to just, go to training. I probably didn't eat properly before I went to training, had a real rubbish training. And then I'd like leave it 2 hours before I got home and ate a proper meal. These days, I'm like, if I don't have like 3 bananas in my bag or, muesli bars, and if I'm not drinking water throughout the day, I can really tell the difference in performance. So that's really important that I eat really well. But other aside from that, like massage. And I used to think this was a G-up. I just thought, oh yeah, I'll just go get a rub down. If you have knots in your shoulders from bashing someone, if you're not like actively trying to alleviate those like knots that come from rugby and like bruising and all that sort of stuff, it's so important because after you go from all that activity to just like relaxing on the couch or something like that, all the muscles start to seize up. Yep. So really keeping your, like my hip flexors, for example, I don't know how many hours a week I just spend trying to get them to open up and you can really tell the difference. I don't know how to explain it. Like just even your running styles, if you broke it down biomechanically, if your hips and glutes aren't working, like you're like probably running 40% less effectively than you should. So yeah, the next day after rugby, there's some kind of like good feeling. Do you know what I mean? Like you feel in pain, but you're also like, oh, like my body was like just in like battle or something.
Yeah.
So I sometimes give myself that like that little time to appreciate, you know, what I've put my body through. So I don't know, just making sure that you have a rest day, if not two. So usually I get a rest day during the week. So if I train Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I might do something really light, not as intense. Thursday, maybe game day, Saturday, and then Sunday just off altogether.
Yeah, that's really important as well. And it's okay to have those rest days. Some people might be like, oh,
It's
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 hard to
more
be
than
like,
that. You have to have rest day.
yeah, because it can be quite full on, especially going into rip footy. But even at club, a lot more clubs, you know, are demanding a lot more for trainings and that. So being okay with those rest days and not overloading like your schedule to, you know, have that time to yourself. But just lastly, as we wrap up, I know I mentioned it to you before the podcast, but did want to touch on obviously your teammates are huge in sport, and you get to know them and build great relationships with them. And it was really, really unfortunate to hear of the horrific incident that happened to one of your teammates, Debbie. And I honestly commend her. I sent her a message for her bravery to even share that, you know, but her heart to share it so that other women would be able to, you know, reach out who are going through domestic violence was incredible. But for yourself, to hear that from one of your own teammates go through that, how did you and even your PNG team, like, how did you guys feel with that? Because that I know my teammates are, like, you know, mean a lot to me. So for you guys to see that happen, like, how did you feel like when you saw that?
Yeah, it was probably one of the most shocking things that I've ever really woken up to, like news wise. Yeah, because gender-based violence is a huge problem in Papua New Guinea. I mean, around the world, it's domestic violence here in Australia has some absolutely staggering stats. Something like 1 in every 5 women experiences that. And to think that we're in 2020 with all this kind of like awareness of self and trying to heal social problems, it really, really is a big stain on this world, you know. But Debbie, unfortunately, you know, was a victim in one of the most horrific ways. And I kind of am really against talking about what happened, because I think that specifically what happened, as in her actual abuse, because I think that what that might do, it could have a sort of a negative effect. What we want to do is just say that nobody should ever have to wake up and watch a video online of one of their friends possibly getting murdered. You know, it could have ended so differently. It could have been that I woke up to the news that she wasn't here with us anymore. But as you said, the good thing about it is that she spoke up, which is a very difficult thing to do, particularly when women are in relationships where they're so dependent on their abuser for their way of life. You know, it could be the father of her children, or the breadwinner, someone who's putting food on the table. It's so difficult for us to understand what it's like to be in an abusive relationship if you've never been in one. From the outside looking in, it'd be like, oh, that's so easy. Just why didn't she leave him, you know, the first time he threatened her? I think it's so much more complex than that. But because we all love Debbie, she's a real valued member of the PNG rugby community and the sporting community in general. She's a really lovely person. To see her go through that, it was just so shocking. And she now has seen how much the community will support her in trying to get a better life for herself. And hopefully that is the message that comes out, that no person should ever be subjected to that kind of thing. We have to stamp it out. We have to have zero tolerance. There is no excuse. I should be able to walk down the street naked and not be abused in that sort of way. There is no justification, not a TikTok video, nothing to
100%.
actually warrant any kind of abuse like that. What it's going to take is first of all, a strong community. We'll make change ourselves. Women will make change by convincing their families, their friends. The community has to want for this to never, ever be a thing again. On top of that, we're going to need political support. So you're going to have to put in policies and like effective policies that severely criminalize anyone who does this. And I don't want to see more videos come out of this kind of thing ever again, but more or less just like a change in culture, a change in action and awareness of our young men and children. We should want the next generation of children to grow up with absolutely no tolerance for anything such as that, because it was really, really obscene. And Debbie's doing fine now. She's really vocal still about this thing, and I know she appreciates all the support that she's garnered from all avenues, all countries, all people have come together to support her. So I'm really hopeful that this now becomes a sort of like a last limit thing. But
100%.
Yeah, I really hope that this has been like a catalyst for absolutely no tolerance of this at all. So
yeah, for sure. And I think that's so true, that like you do need a community that will stand up from all walks, not just athletes coming together in the community, but anyone, because no one should go through something like that. And so I think it's true, we do need a community that would stand up, just like how people have been standing for the Black Lives Matter campaign. It's just as important that people need to stand up and gather together. And when it's just one person voicing it, it might not be as effective, but when you've got a group of people that will stand together and say, regardless of whatever happened, no one should ever have to go through something like this. And so creating that awareness of people not buying in, but making that stand, like, hey, this is not okay. And the political side as well, there has to be some justification, and like not just a slap on the wrist. It's got to be more than that. Like, and it's not just in like in Australia, but here in New Zealand, right across the world, we see it. But I think this whole, even the Black Lives Matter campaign, in that it's you can hear the frustration, you can feel it right across the world, that people are starting to make a stand for topics that have been there for years. But I think it's really cool to see people actually fighting for it now. So I really do hope that this wouldn't just be like a movement and everyone kind of just jump on board, like for the attention or whatever, but this would be something that would actually make a change and would actually see shit.
I think I'll just add one more comment on that. I mentioned that that kind of behavior should be completely stamped out and criminalized by the legal system, but I think a much harder problem to tackle is the complexity of like the spiritually broken, meaning what we should be trying to understand why men resort to violence in the first place, because if that's not understood and addressed, we're just going to be feeding this for the rest of our lives. Women are going to be generation after generation, if we're not raising young men, if we're not raising or trying to get men to unlearn that those kind of behaviors, that violence is not the answer to problems, and these are real individual personal problems too. When men, if I could just speak to like in Pacific Islander communities back in the day, we all had roles to play. So men had their role of like head of this and hunter of this, and they had genuine purpose for what they were doing in their communities. Sorry, my eyes are watering.
No, you're right.
But nowadays, in this, extremely modern and accelerating at rates we've never seen before, men sometimes lose their place and they're a little bit confused about what is my role now, particularly when you've got countries like mine who have unemployment rates of like, I don't know, the data's not even there. We don't know what men are doing, wandering around aimlessly.
Yeah,
what needs to be looked at is how are we going to guide and look after men in the community so that they feel they have purpose and they don't have to have this big lack, this emptiness where they go and they are obviously doing something from a place of real brokenness and hurt. So
yeah,
when I say there needs to be legal and policies and stuff like that, what I really mean is we need to understand our society and the challenges that people face before they go and do these things. And if they do these things, how can we rehabilitate them? How can we teach them that that isn't the way to do things? Men and women, I'm not just saying that, but I really think it's a huge problem, like a lot more just than getting the criminal system involved, because what that might do is then take men out of the situation altogether, and that's not an answer to anything at all either.
And that's so true what you said, and I think the word that comes to mind is educate. When you're talking about that, and even just this morning I read like an article. You might have seen there was unfortunately like a shootout here in Auckland with the officer being killed, and
I saw that. That's really devastating.
It's just crazy, like like back in the day, hearing a shootout would be like, what? Doesn't happen
movies.
over here.
We think it's in the movies.
Never would happen. And I don't even know who this person is, but they put together like a blog or an article about it, and obviously was just devastated at the situation. But the aspect that she touched on was like, the title was that she mourned twice yesterday, and so the first one was when obviously she heard about the officer being killed, but the second one she mourned was when she found out that a 24-year-old had been charged with it. And so the reason why she said she mourned twice was that this kid was like 24. It was over a traffic incident, and she was just like, that's his life gone. And she was talking about like how it's not just one thing, just to hear about it, but like what drove him to that desperation that he felt he had to run from the cop. Like there's got to be an underlying reason why you don't. And then one of her lines she wrote is, a healthy person doesn't wake up and just decide, I'm gonna do this. Like, and that's for any topic really. Like there's always an underlying reason why, and I think if we could educate ourselves and on the society that we live in, I think if we can educate ourselves on why they do, or what's in place, or are they coming from broken families, or and it's true what you said about guys might not feel like they have a purpose, and then if they get to that stage, they're just like, I don't know what else to do, and they get to that stage of desperation, and that causes them to do things that they never would have been raised to be like, you're gonna do this when you grow up, like. And so I think finding out the why and educating ourselves, and also obviously having those other things in place, just the system and that, but there's also got to be a flip side of understanding why they do what they do, because they don't just wake up one day and decide, I'm gonna do this, like. So very heavy topic. For sure.
Unfortunately, there's been a bit of that lately, hey. So it's really important that we try and maintain our own mental health as well around these uncertain times, because it's easy to just get real collapsed into the bad news. There's so much of it on the media and stuff like that. The best thing to do is just do what you can do and look around your friends and family and tell them that you love them, and if they're 100%. Okay. And imagine if every single one of us did that, we'd be able to get to the problems before they get to be beyond our control.
Yeah, and just as we wrap up, that's the whole purpose of why I did this podcast was, you see what's happening the mental illness, you know, like the stats, suicide stats, the depression, anxiety, all of that. And it can get so overwhelming. But for me, I was just like, okay, what can I do to play my part? And I think it's so true. If everyone just looked after their own circle and like their own
Yeah,
family, checked in on their family, checked in on their loved ones, everyone connects with a different group of people. So if everyone just did their part and just send a message to check in,
that's it.
like you start like that, and eventually it doesn't just go like it doesn't just you don't make a huge impact just out of nowhere. It starts within your circle. So I'm stoked that you would jump on this podcast, and I guess I chose female athletes because obviously I love footy, and like having a good yarn as well. But the message is always the same, like getting, you know, being okay with not being okay, reaching out to your own circle and things like that.
Yeah,
So I appreciate
yeah.
you jumping on.
No, I
Anything?
commend you, Chanel. This is a really, really great podcast. I'm really proud of you. Like, honestly, I'm really honored to be asked to speak because I mean, I've got more than enough chat. I'll talk to anyone about rugby, about anything, like, because I'm very passionate about these like social justice causes. But yeah, really well done, and congratulations on starting something that's going to hopefully contribute to these kind of issues. So.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much, Liz. And for everyone watching today, obviously, a huge wide range of topics we obviously talked about, but I know someone watching will get something out of it, and if it can help change one person, then it's all worth
Well, you've
it.
helped me. You've
You helped me too. Like every
That's
time I talk to someone on a podcast, like I always walk away like, bro, let's go. Like, you know, I feel
it.
inspired and stuff, and likewise with whoever's on the podcast as well. So
So, are you still playing footy?
unfortunately at the moment not. It's pretty crazy, and like I'm about to actually drop tonight my story behind like, you know, my footy journey and stuff, and so I'm not playing at the moment. It's part of the reason why I moved back, because I came across a health barrier as well. So a first time ever dropping my story on a public platform, so that's going to be pretty scary. But for me, I was just like, I hear you guys' stories, and I talk with, you know, athletes from all different walks, and the vulnerability has been so overwhelming. And someone asked me like, "Why don't you share yours?" And I'm like, I'm not like these athletes that, you know, play international. Like, yeah, but you were gonna be on that path, and so for me, I'm just like, all right, let's do it. So I miss it. I miss the game so much. Actually, today club footy has just kicked off here in New
Yeah,
Zealand.
yeah, I saw that in New Zealand. The girls are back as well. Yep.
Yeah, so I'm really excited about that. But yeah, we'll see how we go. We'll see how
Well,
we go.
how fantastic! I think I mean, if anything, you, like I said before, you'll probably learn a lot more from your time away from rugby than you ever did when you were just in it. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
100%.
real credit to you, sis. You're doing great.
Thanks so much. And everyone who's obviously watching, if you haven't already, please make sure you subscribe, and turn on that notification
I
bell.
already did.
Epic, let's go. But yeah, thanks again, sis, for your time. And until next time.